In this episode of After Hours with Rebecca Dately, I talked to Emily, a serial monogamist who attempted to unleash her inner Carrie Bradshaw for a year, but love had other plans. We also get the female perspective on who should pay for the first date and more. After Hours starts now.
Hi, everybody who's watching, listening, anything in between. Thank you so much. And thank you, Emily, for coming on After Hours with Rebecca Dately.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So, Emily, just give me a little bit of a background about yourself, age, what you do, and how long you've been in your relationship.
Sure. I'm 26 years old and I live in Pittsburgh. I work in out of school time education, which is basically like after school activities. And I work with teens. We do career exploration. So like helping them to figure out what steps I might want to take after high school. I've been with my partner, Richard, for a year and a half. And we met on Bumble. So that's kind of a story. And the other thing that I will just say that we didn't already address, because we were having a great conversation before this too. I was very excited to hear about this podcast. I think I might have told Jose this, Jose hooked me up with you to talk about this. Yes. But so when I was on dating apps like 2-ish years ago before I met my partner, and even before that, I actually went on a lot of dates that weren't on dating apps, which I was like very proud of, because this was like 3 years ago. Like people weren't really trying to do that much.
Yes, everybody was all about the dating apps.
Right. It was like, I feel like right kind of near that culture change time. So there were a lot of stories that I had from that time that I wanted to like make a dating blog. Like I always joked about making a blog about it, because mostly like, especially like the getting dates in person and not on a dating app, although dating apps are like their own level of like awkward sometimes. But I just think that like dating can be really awkward and people like don't want to talk about it, and people don't always want to like share how awkward it is. But yeah, I went on several dates and I was like, listen, I'm kind of awkward. And I'm a Libra, so I like giving advice. So
and I'm kind of weird. You should know this. Like,
well,
no,
yeah, so it's just like
starter, Emily.
I mean, I just wanted to like give my friends like, you know, like funny stories. And then I was like, oh, yeah. And like, yeah, exactly. Like make it relatable of like other people struggle with dating. Like you don't have to feel like you're alone. And that was kind of like, I wanted to write a blog, and then I was like, I mean, I'm not going on a lot, like kind of like Sex and the City vibes, but like I wasn't going on enough dates to make it anything like lengthy enough. So I was excited to hear about this podcast.
Pittsburgh, Sex and the City, Pittsburgh style.
Yeah.
Right. So Emily, when you said that you were actually going on a lot of dates outside of the dating apps, how are you meeting people?
So I moved to the city in the fall of 2016, and then a few months after that, like I was in a service year, and so like we kind of had a little network there, and I went to a lot of volunteer events, as well as I went to a school in Ohio, so like a lot of people from that school, from that college, had moved to Pittsburgh. So yeah, moving to a new city, I was like really trying to get like a social life. So I would just meet people, and honestly, if I like saw a guy that I thought was pretty cute, and like we only had to have had one interaction, and then I would be like, hey, do you want to get coffee sometime? Because I did. I kind of ruined that punchline. And again, this is something that I don't know that my partner knows this about me, but
it's okay. And he's not watching right now.
Not at the moment, but he will definitely be watching. But I think that's interesting too, about like how not everybody's partner, like, you know how some people are like, oh, my partner knows everything about me. And I'm like, well, do they know everything about you? Like
I brought up
know about you.
Everything.
So, right. But the point is, so I was at a volunteer event, and the volunteer organizer, and this was like a reoccurring event, I was like, this was the very first date that I went on in the city, and this was the first guy that I asked out as well. I was at the event like for a second or third time, and I'm like organizing some papers. Like that's pretty much all my job was at this event. And I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if he asked me out? And then I was like, wait, I can ask him out. Like I don't have to wait. Like I think that for me, if a guy is turned off, but like if he said no simply because he was like offended or like kind of
you were
like
the aggressor, you'd be like,
right.
That's not
If
my
he like,
tea.
if it like threatens you in some way that a woman's asking you out, then you're not the guy for me to date. So
I love that. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I was pretty proud of myself.
So that kind of became your thing, like you would normally ask for coffee. Like,
well, I only did it twice, to be honest. I did it twice. I would often, I'd be very like forward after a first date about like, well, I don't think it's very forward, but like kind of classic dating advice of like, oh, you should tell them like, let's do this again, right? And like, I would only say that if I was serious. I'm not gonna like tell you that and then like let you down easy later. But yeah, I did that twice to strangers.
Now that you brought that up, since you did ask the first time, I have to know, did you pay for the guy's cup of coffee?
I don't remember.
I don't know. I just thought that would be a good.
I think, okay, so I did it twice and they were like a year apart. And I think that the first one I might have paid. Okay. And he was like, oh, you don't have to do that. And I was like, well, I was feeling really weird. I was like, I don't know what to do, right? But then the second time I was like, I'm not paying for your coffee. I don't even know you.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Do you want to get coffee? Get your coffee. I'll meet you over here. But that is fun. I like that you were still putting yourself out there, because if you are interested, you don't need to have a guy always be dancing around it. And you said, by you asking if they wanted to have coffee, you were basically saying like, okay, I'm interested. I think you're attractive. Like, let's see if we connect on a deeper level.
Right. And I just think that, yeah, I like I said, that when I had that thought of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if he asked me? I was like, I'm not going to be some like damsel, like waiting around. Like,
yes.
And what's the difference between asking someone for coffee or swiping right? Like, really, what's the difference? You're saying that you're interested.
I like that.
Thank you. Yeah. I just came up with that, but
cup of coffee, you're swiping right.
Yeah.
People watching, if you swipe left, it means you're not interested. And if you swipe right on the person's picture,
on the dating app,
you're giving them the okay on the dating app. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But then the other thing that I will also bring up is that before this, before I moved to the city, I had been in 2 long-term, long-distance relationships. And so I was like, I was kind of down on myself.
Emily.
What's that?
You're only 26.
Yeah, well, like the first one I was like, oh, we're going to be high school sweethearts. And then the second one, like I met him in college. But I met him while I was in college and we went to different colleges. So I was like kind of down on myself and like, oh, I'm like some sort of serial monogamist and like I need to stop that. So that I think also spurned my desire to be like, well, I'm just going to go after it. And if I get rejected, whatever, like this is the thing that I just want to go have fun. And honestly, the thrill of like the ask is pretty fun. So I recommend it.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about when you were using the dating apps.
So like I said, so I went for probably a year, like dating in the city before I got on the apps. And so like I just kind of ran out of people in my network, right? And I got on the apps. I tried a few different apps. I honestly didn't love them because
you can list. You can list.
Yeah, I was mostly on like Bumble, and there's another one. It's called Coffee Meets Bagel. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh, I actually know a couple that they met through there and now they're married.
Wow. Yeah. So I used those 2, and I tried Tinder for like a week, and I just couldn't, because so Bumble and Coffee Meets Bagel are more geared towards like. There are more people on there who want to go on an actual date, who aren't just like maybe looking for someone to have some fun and hook up with. And at least in Pittsburgh, that's the way that
Mm-hmm.
that was my experience for the week that I had on Tinder. Because it was really just like every guy that I interacted with on Tinder, I wouldn't even call it an interaction, because they would whatever, initiate and say something like lewd or just a little bit weird. And I was just like, no, thanks.
And you were like done. So
Right.
that makes sense. But it's funny because I did meet my boyfriend on Tinder and we had great.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to like insinuate.
Totally fine. I'm like thinking about my mom watching and I'm like, Mom, don't worry. I didn't hook up on the first date.
Right. And I mean, it's not even, I don't mean to.
No, yeah.
Everyone does that. But I think, I don't know how many long-term success stories in Pittsburgh, whatever.
I actually know a couple who also did meet on Tinder and they're married now too. So
well, I'm really wrong. But also like, it's, it's just kind of like, my friend, like that's the way my friends talk about how they used it. So
it's more, Tinder's definitely known way more as being kind of like a fling, or, I'm going to hop on Tinder tonight after, I'm out with my boys and I'm going to see who I meet. So I understand what you're saying. So Emily, when you were on the dating apps, did you have any like memorable bad dates?
So I'll preface by saying that I only went on, I think this is actually, I feel like this is a great statistic. I only went on 3 dates from dating apps. And that third date turned into my long-term committed relationship. So that's pretty good odds, right?
Really good odds.
But the first date that I went on was just kind of littered with weird, quirky things that were happening. So we had great conversation via text, and then we were gonna meet up for brunch because I love brunch. But then his car broke down, and he was coming from like 50 minutes away, I think. So waited around, like not waiting around, but like we were checking in throughout the day, and then he was like, my car's fixed, like, do you want to meet up somewhere? So we decided to meet halfway at a Panera Bread.
Keep going. Panera.
My friend is like,
by the way, I like Panera, but keep going.
I like Panera too. I like their food. But yeah, my friend later is like, that's the least romantic thing ever. And I was like, listen, I thought, again, I think it's one of those things that's like, if it's going to work out, it's going to work out. If you like each other, it doesn't matter that we're at a Panera Bread.
I agree too. And it would make for a great story. It would be like, oh my gosh, remember when my car like totally broke down and then we met at the Panera like halfway?
Yeah.
It's cute.
Yeah. And because, I mean, I said, I liked the conversation with this guy. I wanted to see what in person would feel like. So we get there, and first of all, he doesn't exactly look like his picture. Like that picture might have been a year or 2 old type of thing. Not a good sign, ladies.
I've had those moments where like, that picture was really old.
Yeah. And then, so we had dinner, I guess. And he was good at keeping the conversation going, but it just didn't feel very like fluid or natural. And yeah, it wasn't clicking, right? So like I said, at the end of the day, I didn't say like, let's do this again, but I didn't like, I'm not going to also come out and be like, well, it was nice to meet you, like, see you never. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, bye, nice to meet you. And then I don't remember exactly what happened right after, but all I remember is the next date that he asked me to go on, he said, how about you come out to my place? Again, that was 50 minutes away. Why don't you come out to my place and I'll make you dinner and we can watch a movie? And I was like, sir, I'm not driving 50 minutes to your place for you to make me dinner and try to probably hook up with me. The connection was not good enough for you to ask me to drive 50 minutes. So, I mean, yeah, it's not like a horrible story, but it's just sort of like, count your losses,
No, I definitely agree. And also it seems so presumptuous. It's like when you're
that's what I'm saying
over your place, if you haven't even gotten to that level of friendship where you feel comfortable being at that person's place, it's kind of like you just feel like, oh, this person's trying to put the moves. As much as a person beforehand says like, oh, I'm not going to try anything, I really just want to make you dinner, it's like you shouldn't put the woman or whoever you're talking to in that predicament.
Right. Like,
You know, take me to a restaurant. Like whatever you're planning on doing with making dinner, if we keep seeing each other, you will show me your cooking skills down the road.
right. Like, let's do something where we can continue to get to know each other.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't have to feel uncomfortable being in your house the second time I've met you.
Thank you.
It just wasn't a good vibe for me, like, overall. It was like, I don't even know, like, if we had a decent connection, I don't know. It was just like, yeah, that invite, like, really turned me off.
Yeah, that was kind of almost the red flag that you needed to seal the deal. Like,
it was the straw that broke the camel's back, for sure.
And you were like, goodbye.
Yeah.
Well, so now that we talked about you saying goodbye to somebody, what are your thoughts on ghosting?
Oh, ghosting is so rude.
I agree.
I've been ghosted, I guess, technically twice. Although then one of the people reached back out to me like 6 months later, and literally, here's what I said. And this was someone who also I dated for. I was seeing him for a few months. Never felt like we really got to the place of saying that we were dating because like he was that good at stringing me along. I didn't realize until after it ended. But then he reaches out to me like 6 months later and is like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Good, haven't heard from you in a long time."
Well, that's perfect.
And then I didn't hear from him again.
A lot of
I
times,
didn't mean it, and like I meant it more like yeah, it's been a while, but still like pointing out like, yeah, you haven't talked to me in 6 months.
oh, I would say to people like, "Oh, hey, stranger, like, did you die? Did you lose your phone?"
Yeah.
There's no good reason for a person.
No, there's no good reason. Just say you're not interested, because also my friends, so like the other guy, we only went on 2 dates, and I'm pretty sure I scared him off because I at the end of the second date, I was talking about like how spirituality is like kind of important, but also like a debate for me. And you know, my dad was like, "Listen, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about spiritual stuff." And I'm like, this is who I am. Richard and I talked about my spiritual beliefs on the 3rd date, and that's fine. So, you know, be who you are.
To show you, yes, be who you are, and that connection will be able to make it through anything that like is maybe considered taboo.
Mm-hmm. But basically my friends were like, "Well, you don't know, maybe he didn't get your text, like you should have texted him one more time." And I'm like, I'm not desperate. I know that it didn't go well, but he could have had the decency. Like, he seemed like a pretty decent guy. I don't know why he couldn't just say he wasn't interested.
Tell me about that night or day when you actually matched with Richard. Yeah.
I'm gonna wet my whistle for this one. When we matched, I can tell you, I just remember, like before we went on our first date. What's up?
Not trying to cut you off, but I forgot to remind people that Bumble is actually where the woman has to make the first move. So that's kind of what makes it different than a lot of the matching sites. So you actually reached out to Richard first after you guys both matched.
True, which, let's be clear, I don't think that makes it a super feminist dating app. It just means that the girl has to make one move.
Right.
So basically, the way dating apps work, right? Both people have to swipe right or say like, yes, I'm interested in this person. And then it sort of like opens up this chat feature. And most of the time, it's been like almost 2 years, right? I hardly remember how it exactly works, but most of the time they're like, you have 24 hours to like start a conversation with them or the match goes away. So usually I'd be like, hi, like, I don't know, something about their profile. Like, you know, you're kind of like, oh, hey, you look fun. I really don't remember. I really don't. And I don't remember what his profile says. I wonder if he remembers. I think mine said something about, he will remind me that there was a picture of me in my purple roller skates because I bought purple roller skates. I haven't used them since. I'm really ashamed, but they are beautiful though, and they're so fun. And I mean, frankly, makes a really cute picture, you know? So
yeah, a great photo op in purple skates.
Yeah. So, I don't know. We just started chatting. And then there's always a point where it's kind of like, well, not always. I don't know if everybody does it like this, but usually it's kind of like, hey, so like, do you want to text? Like, can I have your phone number? And then you switch from the app, like chatting on the app, to texting.
Honestly, I like that better for some reason if I'm going to meet up with somebody, because I went on a lot of dates too. it's weird if you're communicating through the app,
Yeah.
getting ready to go on, like, don't you feel that way? Almost like they could ghost you even worse, or like you show up and they're not going to be there. It's kind of like having their phone number always made me feel like, okay, this is a real person. I'm about to meet them. So I understand with that giving of the phone number exchange.
Right. And for me, I always would have like a decent conversation with the person before we would meet up. So again, yeah, it was just kind of like, you don't want to be having this full length conversation on this app. Like, it makes more sense to do it in a text. So I remember when Richard asked me for my number, I gave it to him, and then he sent me a text. And I wish that I had pulled this up. He sent me a text, and the first thing he sent me was, I don't know if you know this meme with like, it's kind of like a toddler, and he looks like this, and it says, hell yes.
I know that the little kid, like, I did it.
And it honestly took me a second. I was like, why did he just send me that? And then I was like, oh, he's excited that I gave him my phone number.
Aww. He was excited that he got your phone number.
Yeah. So
that's really cute.
That's kind of like, that's just, yeah, I think from the beginning, even on the app, we were pretty true to who we were. Cause like, we're both, yeah, just kind of dorky and like kind of, I'd say honest in that way, right? Like, if, you know, you get a girl's phone number, you celebrate if you're into her, I guess. So yeah. And then we met probably, yeah, like after a week or a week and a half of chatting, we met at a rock climbing gym.
That was
that was our first date. It was a really good first date.
Okay,
because
heard to do activities. That's definitely an activity.
Because it like diffuses the tension. And it makes it fun, and it's not all like, oh, like, do you want to get coffee or like sit down for a meal and like just like sit with this person and talk to them. Although we did get pizza after. So yeah.
So the thing is, I think on the app you can have, it's like GPS located kind of, right? Like off your phone.
Yeah.
You have a radius put in.
Yes.
Now, what was your radius?
So this is the question that will lead to the story about how I jokingly say that Richard tricked me into a long distance relationship, because Richard lives in Altoona and I live in Pittsburgh. And I live in a neighborhood called Point Breeze, and the next neighborhood over is Homewood, and the next neighborhood over is Penn Hills. And his family lives.
Those are all suburbs of Pittsburgh?
No, they're neighborhoods within the city limits. Yeah, okay. Pittsburgh is confusing, but basically he was at home visiting his parents in the Pittsburgh area, so his location matched up with my location, and so. Yeah, so we're talking, and like I said, I've already been in 2 long-term, long-distance relationships before this, and it wasn't really what I was looking for, but to be honest, I'm pretty sure he did tell me that he was living in Altoona, like before we even met up on the first date. I just don't think that I don't know that it really like hit me that was like an hour and a half or more away for some reason.
I think like an hour and a half to 2.
Yeah.
I haven't been to visit Pittsburgh yet, but we'll have to get coffee.
Yeah, we should. I'll let you pay for your own.
I was going to say I'll get yours.
Oh, thank you.
So that must have been, when did he tell you on the app when you first started messaging, like, oh, I'm just here visiting?
Yeah, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was around the time that I gave him my phone number, because at that time he was at visiting a Renaissance festival with a friend. And
is Richard a LARPer?
He's not. Unless he's keeping it secret from me all this time. But yeah, and so that was out near Altoona, and he was like, oh, I'm at this place, like it would be cool if we went. Like, actually I think he suggested that for our first date, and I'm glad that didn't work out, because that might not have gone as well as the rock climbing went really well. Yeah, so.
Who picked the rock climbing?
He did. He asked if I wanted to go rock climbing. And I think that's because in my profile I wrote that I like the outdoors and I like hiking and stuff. So he thought that I would like it. And I think we both had done it just like once before. Yeah. So it was just, kind of fun to like try something newish together.
That's really cool.
And he's really strong, so that helped him to show that off.
And I'm sure he wanted to see your butt in a harness. Because, yeah.
Well, we were, oh, Rebecca, okay.
I'm gonna go there.
Well, we were bouldering, which is like it's more about climbing. It's like you don't go up super, super high, so you're not in a harness. Yeah. But I'm sure that there was still the opportunity to, I was wearing some leggings, so.
So, that's really fun. And now you guys have been together for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And you just told me you guys are actually going to be splitting the difference between distances coming up.
Uh-huh.
But speaking of the distance, I know some people, because we do know there's people who date long distance, and you said you were in 2 long distance relationships. Was that out of state?
Yes, because I was in college in Ohio, and both of the men that I was dating separately they were at colleges in PA. So
okay, because I do know some people. I used to be in a long distance relationship, and it was about like 2 to 2.5 hours, and I would complain about it because I know what the drive is like, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, people do it all the time with like states, or you have to get on a plane to visit your significant other."
Yeah, no, I've had the same experience.
I still think that I would say 2 hours. I kind of think more than 30 minutes, I consider.
That's what, like, for me, it's like, if it is too far for you to go see them on any given night, then it's long distance.
Exactly.
Because at first, I think it's actually an hour and 45 between Pittsburgh and Altoona. But at first, I told one of my friends that it was an hour and a half, and they were like, well, that's not really long distance. And I was like, screw you. Yes, it is.
Yes, because
I only see him on the weekend.
Exactly. And it would be 3 hours round trip, which is so long, and it's
too long.
Your day.
Yeah. But my other relationships were like about 2.5 or 3 hours.
Yeah. So it's long. Do you have any advice for people that are doing long distance? Or what are ways you can maybe keep the fun alive during the week? Because you just said you only see him on the weekends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I will just say, there's a reason why I said I didn't want to do it again. Although I'm glad that we are doing it. It's because long distance is hard because, you're kind of living 2 separate lives. And then when you see each other, if it's like on the weekend or something, then it's almost like you have this reoccurring house guest that then you have to you feel like you have to entertain. And it's like, it truly because then it feels, we've been doing it for a year and a half now, so it's gotten more normal, but I'm just a generally busy person. So I often have other things going on the weekend, like going to hang out with a friend or like a meeting. Mm-hmm. And I feel bad sometimes when that happens, but it's like, my life can't just stop. And I can't only schedule things like on the weekdays so that my weekend is just completely free. It's not realistic for me.
That's good.
So things that you can do, ultimately it's just about learning how to grow together and how to share your life with that person. If you're intending to form a long-term partnership with them, how can you share your life with them even though they aren't there all the time? So for us, we usually talk on the phone for a few minutes in the morning. We talk on the phone to say goodnight, and then sometimes we find a longer period of time in the day to chat as well. We will watch Netflix and video chat each other, but
that's
also
really
it's
sweet. Together.
Mm-hmm. You need 2 screens to do that, but I know a lot of people that do that. And then otherwise, it's just for us. I think what really works is that there are a lot of things that we love doing together. So, we love to cook, and we love to, work out and also be outdoors. And so those are things that we can schedule into our weekends that make it easier when you are having that house guest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does he know you call him the house guest?
No, I don't call him that. This was the first time that I made that metaphor. But it's just it's all of a sudden this person is with you. They're attached at the hip because it's not their space, right? We've had a lot of conversations, especially surrounding the current pandemic of like, well, do you want to move in? But it's like, there's not room for you in my bedroom and I have roommates, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's just not your space. And similarly, like his apartment is not my space. So yeah, but ultimately it's about being able to make sure that like you don't grow so much in the time that you are not with that person that you just like become a different person. Like I think that that's the most common way, or like kind of the reason why both of my other relationships ended. Just because like, I mean, you're in two different places and you begin to want different things.
Wow. That's really interesting. I think that's kind of profound how you said it. Like they don't start to grow so far away from, or at least maybe the person you want them to be in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and I mean, I just think also in general, any type of relationship, whether you're like dating, just like kind of on and off, or like, you know, dating, going on dates with lots of people, or if you're in a serious relationship, it takes a lot of self-awareness. Because the other thing that I like to say, and as I already said, I'm a Libra, I love giving advice.
I'm a Libra too.
Oh, no way. Things make sense now. But ultimately, I think what was the point that I was getting at?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I'll find it, because it's really, I've been thinking about this all day, that like something I wanted to get across is that like, one thing that I always say to people is that, or like, especially when I was in college and I'd already been in one serious relationship for like 4 years, right? So all my friends were starting to date and I was like, listen, they're like, you know, oh, this is hard, this sucks, blah, 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 why does love hurt? I'm like, listen, honey, because when you are in a relationship with someone, it's almost like a contract. You trust them, right? But it's almost a guarantee that you guys are going to hurt each other in some way, whether it's, you know, it's going to be small things or maybe it's a big thing and you break up, right? But like, you're going to have fights, you're going to see things differently. You're not always going to agree. It's not always going to be perfect. And part of like making a relationship work is accepting that and being able to work with that person for a long time, right? Like, that's ultimately the test of a relationship, is that, yeah, how long can you
handle the other person?
How long can you like make compromises with each other? And so in order to like kind of avoid that as much as possible, like hurting someone, I think it takes a lot of self-awareness about like, oh, this is who I am, this is how I'm feeling, this is how I'm going to impact someone else. And so like dating as one mechanism for like getting to know yourself, kind of, and especially I think in that long distance situation where you're like, oh, what is different today than a month ago, you know, like what has changed and how much more is that impact felt, like kind of exponentially, because I don't see my person all the time.
Exactly. Dating as one mechanism. That's really deep. Like, what do you mean by that, Emily?
No, I know what I mean. I just like, I'm not sure if we want to. So what I will say is that, and this kind of, I think like is going to touch on, another question that you told me that you'll ask me, but that's fine. You know, I think that we can talk about, yeah, whatever. We can get back to that. We can come back to that. Yeah. But, I think that in my first 2 serious relationships, I was pretty young, and I was really looking for someone to make me feel good about myself. Because, you know, like whatever, you grow up, it's sort of like, I feel like the minute you become an adult, you're like, okay, so like, what are all the things from my childhood that kind of screwed me up that now I have to fix, you know? So, no offense, Mom. I love you. But so having that person who loved me, I was like, oh, like this means that like I'm good and I'm good enough. You know what I mean? And I think that when my second long-term relationship ended, and before I knew I knew that before I wanted another relationship, I wanted to feel more secure in myself. And so, yeah, so I just think that like, just kind of like reflecting on those things, and especially reflecting on, I would say, like going on a lot of first dates, or like, you know, like dating a lot of people not so
Figure out
seriously.
what you want, what you don't like, what's
Right.
a deal breaker, those type of things.
And also, like, how do you deal with rejection? Like, why is like, I think a lot of people avoid dating because there's like a lot of, you know, they say you got to kiss a lot of frogs or whatever, or vice versa. You know, it's not going to work out with every person. And the more you try, the more likely it is that you're going to have situations where it doesn't work out, right? So yeah, I would just say, I mean, I'm a big fan. I was also listening to Brene Brown earlier. I don't know if you've heard of Brene Brown. She is an author and also a social worker and also a researcher. She researches vulnerability. And so why did I bring this up? Because as a vulnerability researcher and a social worker, she, like, you know, just has a lot of advice on ways to be intentional in relationships with not just romantic relationships, but with people. And so just thinking about, the ways that, like, if you want your relationship to be successful, and that could be like your relationship with your partner, it could be a relationship with yourself. You just have to you have to be like honest about stuff, right? So you have to be able to like be honest with yourself. You have to be able to know yourself really well.
That's when you're vulnerable. Is when
exactly.
when you're vulnerable is when you're the most honest, because you're not kind of caking on the makeup or, you know, disguising how you really feel about something. I think I'm getting you on this.
Yeah, thank you, because I feel like I was rambling, so
right.
I'm hoping it makes more sense to everybody now.
It does. It definitely does make sense. And I kind of think what you're getting at is really important, is about being self-aware. And as soon as you know that, you are bringing so much more to the relationship. I always, my parents, when I was growing up, they'd always be like, you want to be with somebody who helps like build you, helps make you better. So that's always been something I like look for in a partner, is, you know, somebody who makes me self-aware and also challenges me to be the best form of myself.
Right. And so, yes, to bring it all around, thank you, Rebecca, to bring it all around, I think that, like, you know, if you've done a lot of like self-work or like whatever you want to call that, like, you also want a partner who has done some of that, because if they haven't, like, you're probably not going to get along for a long time, right? Because it's just like that, you know, it's just like one of the factors, I think, of connection.
You just don't click.
Right.
Well, should I ask this question?
Sure.
How do you know when a person is the one?
The one.
One is the loneliest number. No.
Oh, no.
Not in this instance. The one is supposed to be like the best.
Yeah, so I guess I would like to kind of reinterpret your question.
No, it's totally fine. I like this.
Yeah.
Challenge me.
No, because I think that at different points in your life, you can find different people that you would be into. Like, you know, I mean, I think the easiest example is that for most of us, like, people that we have dated in the past that we have moved on from, like, hopefully you wouldn't want to date that same person again, right? But similarly, like, you know, if you meet someone too early, you might not be like ready for them, right? So I guess I'm reinterpreting by saying that, like, how do you know that the person is someone that you want to make a long-term commitment to?
I like that. I like that interpretation.
Yeah, and because, I mean, and I'll say, Richard, if you're listening, it doesn't mean that I don't want to be with you for as long as we possibly can. Because I think that I do want that. You kind of asked that earlier. So how do you know that someone is the person that you want to make a long-term commitment to, right? I think that a lot of people in our culture are a little bit trigger happy with like marriage. So like, how do you know that is someone that you want to make that legal binding connection with?
It is a loaded question. I wouldn't say there's necessarily a right answer. So
No.
it's just,
And I know what it feels like personally, but it's sort of like, how do I know that I didn't feel that before? I think for me, yeah, it just feels like right place, right time. Like I said, so one of my past relationships ended because I was just like, I just don't feel like you get me. And I was really questioning. It was like 4 years. And I was like, I don't feel like I feel like you kind of accept me, but you don't like get it all, type of thing. And interestingly enough, I could like rephrase that to say that like that's how I feel like Richard really, really accepts me. He might not understand every piece of me, but he's willing to like listen to it and to meet me where I am. Because I mean, frankly, there are lots of things that are the same about us, but there are lots of things that are different, right? And so yeah, and so for us, I feel like it just feels really right. It feels like we both have differences that we're willing to like compromise on and to hear the other person about. And I think that we both are experiencing ways that both of us make each other better. So it's not like you have to make sure that it's not one way, because I've also been in a relationship like that too, right? But yeah, I feel like he encourages me to be my best and I encourage him to be his best. And like, I really feel like we are both better because we are with each other. And so then going back to the like soulmate question, I would say, you know, I feel like you could find multiple pairings that could like, you could find that mutual like uplifting together, but like which one works the best type of thing, or like which one is right place, right time. Like we were both ready for a long-term commitment. Even though I was adverse to the idea at first, we were both.
You got your playgirl ways out of your system
For like 1 year, only 1 year of my life, and before that, I was a relationship girl, and now I'm a relationship girl. But yeah, I just think like, you know, we were both ready to do what we needed to do to like make our relationship work because we wanted to see where it went, and it felt really worth it to us. And it just continues to work and to work out. And I just think that like, you know, when disagreements come up, it's easy for us to remember like the reason why we are together, and the reason why, like, you know, we actually had a fight like a week ago where I was like, okay, like what I love about us is that like you make me feel heard type of thing. Like you make me feel understood and accepted. And in this fight, I don't feel understood and accepted. So like, how can we use that that idea of who we are as a couple to come to a resolution?
Communication, 100%. Why I think a lot of relationships don't succeed is because people say, oh, well, I can't talk to them. But I always say that in communication, that's the greatest gift, is that, you know, you could bring something up from years ago. If it's still bothering you, like that's the point. If it matters to you, it should matter to your partner or whoever you're with. And you can readdress those things and talk about them. So I definitely agree with you on, you know, feeling heard. And I think that communication is really what is gifted to every relationship, is being able to communicate. And I think too few people utilize it. They think, oh, I've been with them forever, I know how they are, but that's not really, you know, that's not always the case. It's like, yeah, but maybe they don't know those issues, or they don't know that bothers you because you never actually expressed it.
Yeah, and I just think that we're both just like similar levels of honest with each other. And again, it's just like, you know, it's like a thing that is working and it keeps on working. And I know, you know how some people say like it should be easy. I think that there's like definitely a level of that. It shouldn't be easy all the time. Like I don't think it's possible for it to be easy all the time. But I think that like if it's easy the majority of the time, and if like you can work if it's easy the majority of the time, and also you can work through hard things together, then that's a really good match.
I love that. Emily, I've asked this question when I talked to a guy, when I was interviewing a guy, and now I'm going to ask you, since you have some great female opinions. What do you think about a guy that would suggest to go Dutch, or what do you think? Who do you think should pay on the first date, and then how should it go after that?
So I appreciate if the dude offers, okay? But I also think that it depends on what the date is, okay? So if it's coffee, and like I said, you know, I asked someone the coffee, and the first person that I asked, I bought him the coffee. Coffee's like $3. In the case of myself and Richard, this is actually a funny story. So we went rock climbing, and rock climbing is like $30 a person, actually. And then we went out for drinks and pizza. So it was an expensive date. And so I let him pay for rock climbing. Or yeah, he paid for rock climbing. And again, so like I said, I appreciated that he offered and that he did that. And then, so the date's almost over, right? We're finishing with our pizza, and they bring the check, and I say, I'm going to pay for this. And he's like, oh, you are? And I was like, yeah, I mean, you got the rock climbing portion, like, and then I don't remember if I paid for the whole thing or if we split it. But that was definitely also, you know, like similar to the girl asking for the first date, that was kind of a power move to see how he handled it. And he will describe it as he will say to me that I said, I'm a feminist, I want to pay for this. I don't think that's how it came like out of my mouth, but I guess that's how he remembers and perceived it. But yeah, so I think that if you are comfortable financially with paying for part of an expensive date, then it's cool. If that's not how you get down, girls, that's fine. I think it's like, it's up to you, you know?
Girl.
Like,
my big thing, I guess, is at least on the first date, I kind of feel like if the guy wants to see me again, the biggest, and we are hitting it off, if he does pay, I'm like, okay, that's like his way of saying like, I'm into you, like, I'd love to see you again.
Right, like the fact that Richard
stuff.
paid for the rock climbing, like it's $30 a person, right? So it was $60 in total. And not that like whatever, tallying up like scores, but like it's I definitely appreciate some chivalry, and
chivalry.
I appreciate that consideration. And I just felt like he already put that out there, and then you know, we spent like just as much money on pizza and drinks. So I was I also don't think that. What's that?
If you've ever heard Emma Watson, she says like you can still be a feminist but accept chivalry. Like chivalry.
Exactly. That's my point, right? It's up to the feminism part is that you get to decide what you want. It's not like feminism means you should pay for the date, right? But for me, I also don't think that like I should expect I don't expect someone to shell out more than $100 for me on the first date. You don't even know me.
You might agree
that much, you know? So we both had a good time. I don't know, you know, maybe if I hadn't had a good time, I would have let him like kind of approach the subject first. I don't know. I just kind of like, I feel it out, you know, what feels right. And it felt really right that also he accepted. So
it was so nice to have you to share.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Emily. And everybody who's been listening to this amazing girl talk. I hope that the guys are enjoying it too. And everybody who's listening to After Hours with Rebecca Dately, we will catch you next week.